Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today.
Redefining what's possible in your field, and then coming back years later to do it all over again. That's exactly what today's guest, Ben Moon, has done in the world of climbing. Friends, welcome back to Ageless Athlete. This is your host, Kush Khandelwal, with a very special guest today. For decades, Ben has been a hero to climbers around the globe. And honestly, I am one of them. I will admit I was a little intimidated going into this episode. Here I was sitting down with the men who put up routes like Hubble, who transformed the way we train with tools like the moonboard, and whose influence climbing on a level few ever reach. What struck me right away, though, was how calm and grounded Ben is. He has this down to earth, humble energy that made it so easy to dive into a conversation that has become one of my favorite recordings yet. Ben opened up about his remarkable journey from breaking boundaries on the iconic rock walls of England to building moon climbing, the brand that's helped shape training standards worldwide. We covered so much in this episode. Ben shared his pride in Britain's climbing community and how far it's come, leading up to today's climbers making waves on the Olympic stage. We also spoke about the role of enduring partnerships in his life, including his friendship with fellow climbing legend Jerry Moffat. You have to stay tuned till the end, where Ben shares the famous headlock story with Jerry. Their unique bond fueled their rivalry and growth, pushing each to achieve some of the greatest heights in climbing history. And while they were setting new standards, they were also rewriting the rules for future generations of climbers. In this episode, Ben offers not only incredible stories from his career, but also valuable lessons on resilience, finding purpose, and staying adaptable. His philosophy on commitment and the importance of revisiting the basics for long term success are lessons that apply beyond climbing. One of my favorite takeaways was Ben's take on seeing every climb as an opportunity to refine fundamentals, a practice that's kept him at the top of his game for decades. Whether you are a climber yourself or just someone looking for inspiration to keep pushing forward, this conversation with Ben Moon is full of timeless insights. His wisdom, grounded in decades of experience, left me feeling inspired, and I think it will do the same for you.
Porridge. I have porridge every day.
Okay.
Porridge.
How do you make it?
I make it with half milk, half water, a sort of seed mix, peanut butter.
Seed mix.
Yeah.
What kind of seed mix?
Well, different seeds like flax seeds, linseed seeds, sunflower seeds, those things. Yeah, and then peanut butter. I find just plain porridge just doesn't keep me going long enough. I need more calories and
Need to
some fat.
add more nutrition and bulk.
Yeah.
I have a funny
Porridge
story.
is you call it oatmeal, I think, don't you, in America?
Yeah, no. So exactly. So I have a funny story about that. So I understand what porridge is, but this kind of oatmeal that I get here, a lot of people get in America. We get this thing called steel cut oats, which for some reason are also called Irish steel cut oats because maybe they have some Irish provenance. And I remember many years ago, I was in Dublin for work, and I wake up in the morning, I go down to the hotel restaurant for breakfast, and I'm so dumb. I'm like, can I have the Irish steel cut oats? And they gave me this like funny look, and they're like, finally she figured it out. She's like, okay, we got porridge over there. If you want porridge, and then my jet lag brain, it finally clicked that yes, that's what I'm looking for. I can't go to Ireland and ask for Irish. Supposed to be
specific oats.
Yeah. Well, I see that it is light still behind you. So even though it is evening and it's been several hours since you've had breakfast, hopefully you are making the most of these long British
evening,
summer going into fall days.
Yeah, well, the clocks. My watch says the sun sets today at 6:00, so it has already set, but there's still a bit of light. But the clocks, clocks change next weekend. I don't know. Do they go back or forward or something? Don't they? Here.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same over there. Yeah.
We lose an hour of.
So I think it's going to be darker earlier, isn't it? Maybe.
Yeah, an hour earlier for us, and maybe the same for you
us,
as well. Yeah. I wonder if we got that from you from the UK at some point.
Yes, I don't know. Yeah, you're all copying us. Yeah, copying us. It's like Greenwich Mean Time. Yeah,
probably another conversation. Ben, for those of us who don't know who you are, can you give us a quick intro? Who are you and what do you do?
Oh my God. Well, yeah, my name's Ben Moon. I'm 58 years old. I was a professional rock climber for about 20 years in the sort of 80s and 90s into the early 2000s. And now I still climb a lot, but I've got my own climbing business, Moon Climbing. So, yeah, I guess that's who I am. But I also run. I also run a lot. So I'm kind of at the moment. I'm kind of half runner, half climber.
Sure thing. Yeah. Ben, I've been inspired by your climbing since I first started getting into the sport. 2 odd decades ago. I had to rewind and go back and look at some of those early climbing videos of yours. It was jogged back into memory lane for myself as I rewatched some of your classics. You've had a very impressive career, and you have managed to push climbing into new limits multiple times. And we don't have time to ask about all the different stories.
No.
But out of some of your more, let's say, impressive accomplishments, can you think about perhaps one that stands out? Yeah, which is maybe memorable, particularly for you, where you perhaps had to try the hardest, push back maybe against some of your own beliefs.
Well, that's a very difficult question. To pick just one, it's almost like you're asking me to pick my favorite sort of almost memorable experience. That's probably climbing a route called Rain Shadow in 2015, which is graded 9A, which isn't like we have 9C now and 9B plus, so it's a few grades off that, but it's still pretty hard. So, and I was like 48 years old or something, and I'd had some time off from climbing, and I'd sort of seen this route and got inspired to get fit again, and I managed to do it, and that was pretty special. And that was like 25 years after I climbed the world's first 9A, which was Hubble, which is in the Peak District. So yeah.
I recognize I asked a rather difficult question, which attempts to elicit maybe one nugget out of multiple decades of climbing. And yes, I was curious if you would pick one from your, your main term as a career,
Yeah.
as opposed to maybe picking up this one, which again, at the age of 48, where most of us would think, hey, the the apex of a climbing is gone now, and let's focus on other things. You managed to recapture and climb something which was, or which is perhaps just as hard, if not harder, than some of your other climbing levels
Yeah.
from quarter century ago. Let's go back to some of your early years, Ben, and maybe take us to the beginning. Was there a defining moment in your life where you realized that you would rather be climbing than possibly doing anything else?
Yeah, probably. Probably when I was 7 years old and I first went climbing, I honestly, I was just hooked straight away. Yeah, it was, we were in this place called the Lake District, which is in the sort of north of England, on a family holiday with some friends, and went climbing, just top roping some little outcrop when I was 7 years old. And it was just like amazing. And yeah, I mean, I thought about climbing all the time. I mean, it was it was very hard to do back then. We're talking like, well, I'd been 1973 or something like that. It was very hard to go climbing back in those days because, there weren't any climbing walls. You needed to go outside. You needed to know people who could do it and everything. But yeah, that was probably when I realized I wanted to climb. And then I just got even more and more hooked. When I was like 14, 15, it completely disrupted my education. Yeah, I just wanted to be climbing all the time.
I've been thinking a lot about energy, not just in training, but in recovery, in focus, in how we age. So when I came across NutriSense, it hit home. It's a program that pairs a 24 by 7 glucose biosensor with a dedicated dietitian to help you understand how your body responds to food, stress, sleep, and movement, and then act on the data. I chose it because I wanted something real, not another hack or one size fits all plan, just honest insight into what's actually going on inside me and how to build habits that last. NutriSense has helped over 150,000 people take that step. And if you want to try it, you can get 33% off your first month with code Ageless15 at nutrisense.io. Again, that's nutrisense.io, code Ageless15. You can also find this information on the show notes for this episode.
And trying to think back of the time when I was 7, and I think I was perhaps distracted and trying so many different things. You somehow discovered climbing when you went outside, and it ignited this,
Yeah.
I don't know, this passion in you. Was that trip accidental? Or was it something in the making where you had been conjuring up these ideas of climbing, and then the opportunity presented itself? And you were like, this is exactly how I thought it would be. And it just confirms
No, it was
how much I would. Yeah.
It was a complete accident. I mean, yeah, it was just a family holiday with another family, and it just so happened that the father of the other family, who came from Yorkshire, which is in the north of England as well, because we lived in London, we were all living in London, he happened to do a bit of climbing, and we were in the Lake Districts on a holiday, and he must have said, "Oh, let's go and do a route." I mean, I'm incredibly lucky. I mean, yeah, to have sort of found something that I feel so passionate about.
Were you naturally athletic?
I was all right at sport at school, but really nothing special. But I could see that I was really good at climbing straight away compared to other kids. Well, certainly when we were like teenagers, like 14, 15, we had like a school climbing club. There was a group of us that used to go climbing, and I was much, much better than everyone else. But yeah, I wasn't particularly, I was nothing special at any of the other sports.
Perhaps what may have been some latent qualities that you had that suddenly found their mark, when you went outside, grabbed the first few holes and scampered up?
Why? You mean why was I good at it?
Well, yeah, like what suddenly made you? Well, the thing is, I love climbing, and my first time climbing was perhaps I was 12. Growing up in Delhi, we went to this place outside town as part of a school trip. I think I was the second worst kid in the group. So what I like to joke is that the things that I've gotten good in my life are the ones where I've had to put a lot of time into, and maybe because I put the time into them, they became very special.
Yeah.
But you kind of had an opposite story.
Well, yeah, except that I put a lot of time in anyway, just probably like you. I mean, but yeah, I just wanted to. Yeah. It was fun.
Okay, so this was a family trip that you lucked into, but then did you manage to somehow adapt your life in a way where you would be able to just get outside so much more? I'm just thinking you were like 7, right? You were living with your family, and your family isn't going climbing all the time. So how did you manifest?
Yeah, well, when I say that I was hooked straight away at age 7, I mean, I climbed once, probably one day then, and then I think probably climbed another day the following year with the same people, and then another day maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years later. But it was really hard to go climbing, and it wasn't until I was 14 or 15 that at school when we formed the climbing club that I started going climbing more regularly. So although I started at 7, it wasn't until I was 14 or 15 that I managed to climb more regularly. But it was certainly in my mind all the time, climbing, even if I couldn't do it.
For sure. And the UK as a country has had a rich history of alpinism.
Yes.
You have had, I don't know, maybe starting with people like, some of the names that come to my mind are people like Sir Chris Barnington.
Yeah, Chris
back
Barnington,
in the day. I remember
Brown,
reading some of it. Yeah.
Don Willens.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm curious, were you climbing big mountains and climbing rocks, or they're part of the same grand sport of mountain climbing, but they can also be quite different? And what was the culture like for climbing where you were? Were people accepting of the sport of rock climbing? Did people understand that perhaps climbing rocks was very connected to something which was seen as maybe more pioneering as scaling cliffs in the Himalayas or elsewhere?
Yeah, well, I think rock climbing was seen as a stepping stone to mountaineering or alpinism, to climbing mountains. I certainly I viewed it like that, in the early days when I first started climbing. I wanted to climb all the North Face, the famous North Faces, like North Face of the Matterhorn and the Eiger and the Grand Jurass and everything. And I used to read sort of mountaineering books, alpinism books and stuff. But yeah, I ended up just getting sidetracked by the rock climbing because that was so much fun. But yeah, I think back then it was more of a sort of stepping stone to alpinism. But now, obviously, the sport's changed just, beyond recognition, really. So,
in those early years, as you were just rock climbing around where you lived and maybe trips to the Peak District and whatnot, did you also get exposed to some bigger mountains?
No, not really. We had, when I was at school, I went to boarding school from when I was aged 11 to 16. And we formed a climbing club in the sort of last 2 years when I was at the school. And we used to take little trips in the summer to this sandstone outcrop near the school, which was all top roping. But we also organised like a trip to the Alps. A group of us went out to the Alps, and we climbed some mountains, in the snow and everything. So I had a little bit of experience, but that was really it. And then after that, after we came back from that holiday with the school, it was just rock climbing all the time.
Was there a point, Ben? So, I did a bit of mountaineering growing up. And for me, in India and some in Nepal. And for me, earlier on, the idea of getting into rock climbing was perhaps learning some technical skills, which would allow me to do, let's say, bigger, more technical things in the big mountains. But once I got into climbing rocks, I found that just to be so fulfilling on its own that I think I just at some point I just abandoned the desire to focus on mountains. What was that point for you, perhaps? Because we know you as an accomplished rock climber, and it sounds like while you did have some trips and some aspirations to do some of those things you talked about, it feels like you at some point made a conscious decision to focus on climbing rocks.
I didn't really make a conscious decision. It just sort of happened that way, basically. I just got so into the climbing. I mean, I'm only guessing, but probably because I was good at it and I improved quickly. It's like I found my niche, and I was just sort of focused on trying to be the best I could at that. And I just didn't even think about going to the mountains or something. I mean, it's funny because a lot of my sort of best friends who are my age, they've had the same sort of route as me, but a lot of them in the 80s and 90s, they did the climbing and then they went on and did the alpinism and stuff like that. So, and both are good routes, aren't they? I mean, I kind of feel like I maybe missed out on that because I was focused on rock climbing, but they probably think they missed out on some of the rock climbing because they were going off to the Alps and doing like these big expeditions and stuff like that. It's completely different, isn't it?
I agree. And yeah, life is all about choices, if nothing else. There's always some opportunity cost. And I feel very fulfilled with whatever bit of climbing I do. But for sure, anytime I go, I was in Peru last year and we did a little bit of mountaineering, and I was like, oh gosh, this is so incredible. I wish I could just do. I sucked at it, in all honesty. But I was like, what? If I spend more time at it, I would probably get better at it. Ben, jumping a few years, at some point, you, let's say, finished studies and you kind of struck out on your own. And one of the more memorable times of your life that we know about is you, I believe, you adopted a rather scrappy lifestyle to be able to climb full time. And you were, I think, living in some very humble environments.
Yeah.
To allow yourself to focus on climbing. So I want you to take us back to that time where you found climbing, it clicked, and you created your surroundings to be able to give yourself completely, find the right community, allow yourself to be close to the type of climbing that would ultimately bring out the best in you.
Well, I think it was moving to Sheffield, really. Again, I mean, I think I was pretty lucky, to be honest. Sheffield's like, I mean, anyone who climbs will probably know that it's sort of one of the sort of centres of climbing in England. And I'd been to the Peak District, which is just next door to Sheffield, where all the climbing is. And I'd met a few people, and because I was still living in London at the time, and they'd said, "Oh, if you're ever up this way, come and knock us up," or something. So when I left school and left London for good, I just went to this house this address that this person had given me. I was like 17 years old, I think. I'd hit back then, you know, you just had to hitch everywhere because you didn't have a car or anything, couldn't even afford to go on public transport. And I ended up at this house in Sheffield to see this guy. Actually, what happened is this girl answered the door and she said, "Oh, my friend wasn't there. He's in Wales." And it was basically, I'm 17 years old. I've just arrived in Sheffield, this strange city, at this strange house. It's getting dark. I'm like, you know, what am I going to do? So I hitched out into the Peak District to this place I'd been climbing before, where I'd met this guy, out into the countryside. And I just, just slept there that night. And then I went over to North Wales the next day, again hitching, and finally found this guy at this place on the coast. And basically, all of the sort of famous climbers in England at the time were there climbing, and I fell in with them, and it was just incredible.
And this was that place in Wales. Was that Llandudno? And was that apparently you guys? I think to use some of your colorful language, you guys dossed up in this cave together.
Yeah, we all lived in a cave. It was a pretty nice cave, though. I mean, Llandudno is a very, very pretty place. It's like a tourist resort in North Wales on the coast, and it gets its own kind of sort of microclimate. So it tends to get really dry weather, hardly ever. It's an old Victorian holiday resort town. It's really pretty. And the climbing at Pentruin's just on this peninsula, which has a marine drive around it, which is one of the things the tourists want to do. They'd want to go around the marine drive. And just as you go onto the marine drive, there's this really big cave. I think it's an old quarry, old limestone quarry, really big cave with grass underneath it, kind of on the outside. Yeah, and that's where we spent like the summer, just sleeping there, and just climbing all the time. Yeah, it was incredible.
And you were living in this beautiful seaside town, but you were subsisting on a very simple lifestyle.
We were,
you know, just the very basics, from what I understand. And is there any part of that old lifestyle that you miss? I mean, you've come a long ways. You're sitting in a comfortable house. You've established this incredible business community. But yeah, what would be some of those things you miss about
the simplicity really of the lifestyle? And I mean, I'm still really passionate about climbing, but in a different way. But you know, when you're sort of 17, you're just completely obsessed. Well, I was, and most of the people I was with were the same. So yeah, maybe miss a bit of that sort of, a bit of that enthusiasm or whatever you want to call it. But the simplicity of the life. I mean, I was living out of a rucksack. We were all living out of a rucksack. You know,
sure.
You had your whole, world belongings on your back. You know, I mean, I don't know how we did it. It's like, because you got climbing ropes and climbing gear, sleeping bag. I mean, we didn't have many clothes. Probably didn't change our clothes very often. Probably, was pretty dirty.
I think it's so funny how even the term being a dirtbag has evolved over the years. These days, if you manage to live out of a car, like a proper automobile which takes you places, that's considered like, in some ways, the apex of, being a dirtbag. You're living out of a car and you're living a simple lifestyle. But again, you didn't even have a car. You had a rucksack.
No.
You had maybe a cup, I don't know, some change of clothes, a warm bag, some basic food supplies, and your climbing shoes. Yeah. It is like this other level of obsession and love.
Yeah. But it's pretty crazy. That reminds me, when you say dirtbag, have you seen that film, the Patagonia film about Fred Beckey, the American?
Oh yeah,
that's good because I think it's called Dirtbag. That's really good. I mean, there's someone who's got passion. I mean, that's just incredible. And the stuff he was doing into his 80s and 90s was ridiculous.
Yeah, Fred Beckey. I mean, he was such an iconoclast. I mean, he was hitchhiking to climbing cliffs in his 90s.
Yeah. And lying on a carry mat on the road, he was still dossing out in his 90s. It was incredible. He was the true ageless athlete.
Yeah, for sure. I think my podcast is about 10 years too late.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
at least we get to talk about him. At
yeah,
least we
yeah,
get to be
yeah.
inspired by his legend.
Any of your listeners who haven't seen that film, they should definitely watch it.
I'm going to add links to that for sure. But I'm curious. Climbers keep pushing the envelope, and when you actually talk to climbers of today who are doing super well, I mean, they just seem just as much in love with the sport. I don't think that the levels that are being set would have been set if they didn't work any less hard than perhaps you guys did, back when. But I'm curious, do you think that this generation of crushers, do you think they're missing out because they didn't experience that lifestyle that you guys almost glorified
No, I don't. I
from
don't
that
think.
era?
I don't think so because every generation's different, isn't it? I mean, we were different to the previous generation, and they were different from the previous one. So I don't think they're missing out. They may be missing out on that, but they're getting something else. And just going back, I mean, I think today actually they're on another level in how hard they work. I mean, it's way more professional than when we, 20, 30 years ago, I think. I mean, there's much more knowledge, and all the top climbers, it seems like, they're working with coaches, and, they've got a team of people, helping them. And yeah, like I say, they do work incredibly hard, the young generation.
Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing, it's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com slash agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com slash agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this. It just becomes more and more professional as a sport, exactly for some of the things you described, the level of technology, commitment, science, all of those things are allowing us to keep pushing the envelope. You and your crew, you were doing, in a way, the same thing. I mean, you were pushing the envelope to hit Hurto uncharted levels. Instead, you were doing that on a very different environment with a very different set of tools in front of you, like we just spoke about. And again, maybe not an easy question then, but what do you think allowed you to, in a way, for your time, push things and accomplish what you did, despite not having what the athletes of today do?
I don't know, really. I mean, I think we experimented with different things. I mean, yeah, it was tricky. I mean, I was sort of influenced by Jerry Moffat, who was influenced by John Backer, the American climber, in terms of training in the sort of early stages. John Backer was, really he thought bouldering was really important, and for strength and dead hanging for your fingers. And so Jerry copied a lot of his ideas, and we just kind of tried to develop and work on them and read about training in other sports, because nothing had been written about training for climbing. It wasn't like today where, there's loads of books on training for climbing. There wasn't anything there. So, I mean, I read a lot of sort of running books and tried to sort of apply sort of running training methods to, my climbing, using interval training and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, tried different things.
So, obviously in today's world, we have all this information at our fingertips. Sometimes it almost seems too much to understand, what to adopt, what to ignore. How are you actually learning about the training styles that, let's say, people like Backer were doing, and maybe other contemporaries of your time who may have also influenced you? And then actually the influences you added to the training and approaches that others had. So like it seems like there was this maybe uneven, but this exchange of information happening. How did that transpire? I'm guessing you guys were not writing letters to each other.
Yeah,
Wrong.
Well, no, I mean, there was like I was living in Sheffield. I still live in Sheffield. I've always lived in Sheffield, and there's just lots and lots of climbers here. And it was the same back in the 80s and 90s. There was still, again, not as many as there are now, but yeah, there was a lot of climbers, a lot of good climbers, and so we sort of rubbed off on each other. We just developed the sort of training ideas. It was all around bouldering, really. Because Backer had been a sort of, saw the importance of bouldering and everything. And I think that's what we did. We bouldered a lot, and then we bouldered on artificial walls, but actual sort of buildings, because there weren't any climbing walls back then. And then we started building sort of very basic sort of indoor walls in our houses, in our cellars, in our basements, little sort of basic wooden boards. And yeah, everyone used to sort of circulate around each other's boards. But it was still fundamentally just bouldering and a bit of dead hanging and stuff. Basically what I do now.
Maybe one or two other questions about that Sheffield era. Obviously, the community and the talent and the passion and the bonds that you guys created and co-lived were, at least in part, what allowed you to succeed to these levels. But I'm curious, was there perhaps a dark side to that lifestyle, to that bare-boned simplicity? Were there other things about that you think perhaps were not as healthy?
Oh no, not at all. What do you? No, I can't think of anything. What are you getting at?
No, I don't know. I mean, you were. I just heard some backhand stories about some of the.
What have you heard?
A couple of the houses. I don't know. Maybe the level of hygiene for one thing.
Oh yes, I see you mean. Yeah, it probably was a pretty dirty lifestyle. Only in the early days, maybe. Only in the early days, like first few years,
sure,
but not later.
And what about because again, you guys were like really driven by performance, right? So I'm wondering if maybe your nutrition or some other things about that were, because I mean, we saw that in the US in the 80s and 90s, there was this culture of starving oneself and sometimes even taking maybe prescription or over-the-counter drugs to allow oneself to continue to push themselves. We talked to Matt Samet, who you know about, and Matt had this whole. He went through, let's say, the darker sides of.
No, I listened to that podcast. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I'm just curious. Was there perhaps like a?
No, I didn't. No. I mean, there were people. I can think of someone who had weight issues, which were bad, unhealthy, anorexia. And other people, my peers, they watched what they ate, and they were trying to keep their weight down, but I wouldn't say it was unhealthy. Whether it's sustainable for a long time, I mean, I've always been really lucky because my weight just doesn't change. And I mean, I had a healthy diet back then and I've got a pretty healthy diet these days. Mm-hmm. But I probably could eat whatever I want and my weight just wouldn't change. So I'm really lucky in that respect. But no, I didn't think there wasn't a dark side or anything back then.
Sure. One other thing I wanted to ask about is the kind of training you were doing, Ben. So, I mean, what I know about a lot of the climbing that used to happen then, the kind of climbing that people would partake in and would even, let's say, glorify were, again, either climbing big mountains or maybe taking a step down, climbing, let's say, long trad routes or multi-pitch routes, basically things which were closer to the mountains, that closer to short bouldering problems. And what gave you guys that conviction that in order to become stronger climbers, to realize maybe some bigger goals, you had to maybe stop going sport climbing or stop going track climbing, and instead, come up with these, improvise these, like you said, these kinds of training, which took place either on bouldering circuits or in abandoned quarries. Like, was that part of the learnings that came from interacting with people who came through Sheffield? Because it seemed like what you were doing was slightly counterculture, even within climbing, or how you trained to ultimately become stronger climbers.
We were obviously really into climbing, and we were good at it. There were a lot of good climbers around in Sheffield, and we just wanted to get better at it and climb harder and harder routes. And I guess we got just more and more focused. If you want to be, really good at anything, you do have to be very focused. You can't be sort of jack of all trades, master. So jack of all trades, master of none. It's like, you have to make sacrifices, and we were obviously enjoying climbing and wanting to push the limits, and that's what we were doing. I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. No, I think it does. I think it seems like you wanted to become better at climbing, and I think maybe there was just a confluence of different things where there was that love for the sport, maybe your own talent getting manifested, plus some learnings and experimentation on what you understood would allow you to keep getting better at what you were doing, keep getting stronger.
I mean, it was a very exciting time because, standards were going up very steeply, very quickly. Once we started, I mean, initially we were sort of trad climbing, and then, with dogging, hanging on the rope, practicing moves and stuff. And, me and Jerry then saw what the Europeans were doing. This is like 84 or something, where they were sport climbing. So we started using their sort of techniques, working routes, red pointing, which obviously means you can climb much harder things. So, it was a very exciting, and, there was climbing competitions as well. So the sport was really changing, becoming much more professional, and standards were, going up quick. I mean, if you're good at something and you think, oh yeah, you've got a chance of being the best, at it, you're going to be sort of pretty focused, aren't you? I think
you were training very, very hard. At the same time, I think, Ben, you probably also had this mental game that I think maybe distinguishes those of us who are able to push things to new levels, to maybe levels which had not been accomplished before. One thing that I remember, I think, reading in Jerry Moffin's book, was that when he first met you, one of the things that I think that struck out about your early trips together was your sheer level of tenacity.
I did try hard.
Yeah, like you refused. You literally refused to give up. Like, you guys would be trying maybe the same moves over and over, but you would sometimes take big falls. Sometimes you would take risks, and you would continue trying something which sometimes clearly looked impossible. And I think that you had this talent, which maybe was getting developed in those early years, because when you started then working on some of your later peak ascents, when you did Hubble and you did Voyager, those projects were very, very difficult. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about if this was like an innate quality you always had, or you had to consciously work on developing this mental side of you?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I probably do have a lot of tenacity, and that was one of the things Jerry said about me. When he first met me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not for everyone, is it? You just like to sort of be so sort of single-minded on specific boulder problem or route or something. But yeah, there's quite a few people like that. But I think it's part of my sort of genetic makeup, I guess. I don't. Yeah. And I think motivation is a big thing as well. It's like, if you're if you're motivated to do something, then you don't mind making sacrifices, working hard, and always think, when you're motivated, everything seems sort of effortless, but your motivation does go up and down through life.
And Ben, you come across as being very self-aware, and maybe even in those early years, you knew some of your talents. And I'm curious if you can think back to perhaps maybe one time where you were working on a project and it was, let's say, it felt so beyond at that time that even you had to question yourself on whether it was really possible. And you had to maybe dig even deeper than you had until then.
Well, no, not really, because I mean, I wouldn't try something if I didn't think I could do it. So yeah, all the things I spent a lot of time working on, and sometimes doing, and sometimes failing. I always thought, oh, I can do these. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother trying.
Well, one of the things that I find particularly impressive, and maybe listeners to this podcast will as well, is what we talked about at the beginning when you accomplished climbing A9A, a level that you had last achieved 25 years prior. Can you talk a little bit about this? So I understand that you had perhaps taken a hiatus from the sport and you discovered this route because you had heard about it, you saw somebody trying it, and somehow, and that unlocked a series of events where not only did you decide that you wanted to try this route, but to do that, you had to go back into climbing, you had to take up the sport again, and then you had to work up to the point where you actually sent that route. So yeah, would love to hear this story in your words, Ben, on why did you leave the sport actually, and then why did you come back?
I think I was just a bit too busy really. My daughter was born in 2009 or something, in 2009, and I had my business, which was only in its sort of early stages and was taking a lot of time, and I didn't have the time to sort of travel really, and I just lost motivation for climbing really. I'm just focused on bringing my daughter up and running the business and everything. But then, my wife and I were going for this walk up in the north of England at this famous crag called Malham. And it was like there was no one around. It was a horrible day, raining and stuff. And there weren't even any walkers around. But when we got to the crag, there was this guy and he was like trying something. The whole cove was like wet. It was about the only bit of dry rock. And he was like high up on this wall working these moves and stuff. And it was this route called Rain Shadow, which is like a Steve McClure 9A. It's one of the best routes I've ever done anywhere. Just certainly one of the best routes in the UK, sport climbs anyway. And it just, kind of sort of fired me up to sort of, I was like, maybe I can do this. I think I was like, I don't know, in my 40s or something. And so I started climbing again. I got really, found my love again, got really motivated and, ended up, I think that was probably around about 2012 or something, 2013. And then, in 2015, I managed to do that route that guy was on, Rain Shadow, when I was like 48 or something. It was incredible.
Sure. Yeah, no, still completely in awe of how you came back. Okay, so you saw this line captivated you, and you decided to dust off your planet shoes and find your jog bag and all of that. So what level were you at when you, let's say, decided to get back? And then how long was that? How long and how arduous slash fun was that journey to get ready
Yeah.
to actually put in serious berms on?
Yeah, well, I was at I mean, I'd say I'd given up climbing. I mean, I hadn't completely given up climbing. I probably went to the climbing wall once a month or something like that. So I wasn't totally out of shape. But in my level, I mean, again, I feel very fortunate for this. My level, even if I don't do anything for a while, it still seems, pretty high. I've got, very strong fingers. Even now, almost 60, I've got, my fingers are strong and stuff. So, yeah, I wasn't like, I was still in reasonable shape, I suppose, but a long way off being good enough to climb something like Rain Shadow. But I just sort of just started climbing again and going out, doing routes, red pointing, sort of working through the grades a little bit, and then just ended up at Malham once. And my friend I was with, he just said, "Oh, you need to get on it and start trying it." So I spent like the next, I don't know, probably 2 months, traveling up there, every once a week or something to try it and work in it. And just incredibly fortunate to get it done, in my first season after about, I think I had about 17 days on it or something. So, yeah.
And Ben, despite, your obvious talent and motivation, you had stopped climbing because life came in the way, as we like to say. You probably had to rearrange your life a little bit to be able to give back, give the training and the climb the effort that it needed. And I'm curious, is there a lesson here that you can share for others on the power of goal setting? Brother, well, if he's listening, he may not like this, but I want him to get in a little bit fitter. And I keep telling him that, hey, if you find a goal and then you work backwards, and it kind of allows things to fall in shape, right? So I want him to maybe train for a race, find a race that he's stoked on. And I'm just curious, like, because again, like, you found this huge goal, and then you had to basically figure out how to be ready. And if there's some lessons here that can teach the rest of us.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there are, to be honest. I mean, you've said it there anyway. I think it's really important to have a goal to sort of to focus on. But I'm not sure what else you can say about it. I mean, I'm not sure what lessons there are to learn.
I guess one lesson right there is.
I mean, some people do have goals. Some people set themselves a goal, but they don't go after it. I mean, just because you set yourself a goal doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to sort of get there, does it? You still need motivation. As we touched on earlier on. But I think goals sort of should drive motivation. But and you need to set realistic goals as well. And you need short-term goals, long-term goals. There's stepping stones to the bigger goal and everything.
I mean, the other thing
isn't everyone? I mean, we're all pretty sort of goal-driven, aren't we? Or maybe not. I don't know.
You would think so, but I sometimes think that a lot of us are often searching for goals. I know that about my climbing. I kind of slowed down a little bit over the past few years because, in some ways, I allowed other things to come in the way. But I also felt like I did not have a goal. And I think that identifying a goal is, even that requires a bit of structure and a bit of, let's say, openness. I mean, in your case, like you're taking a walk with your family and you happen to see this line. And I mean, your love for the sport, I sense, never went away. And when you spotted this, something clicked, and you're like, this line seems incredible. It seems powerful. So you had this openness to embrace this target, this thing, which I think is. I don't know if you're always as open to that.
I mean, yes. I mean, I don't have any goals now, actually. So you don't necessarily need goals. I mean, my only goal now is to just like try and stay fit really, and try and slow the decline, as I get older. So yeah, maybe you don't need sort of big goals. Just staying fit and healthy is a goal, isn't it? And probably the most important thing anyone can do, really.
I agree, but I would like to also postulate that those of us who experience the joy of, let's say, in this case, climbing a really beautiful route, we know if we stay in shape and that route comes in our path again, we will at least have it in us to want to give it a go. So I think for many people, just the idea of staying fit and healthy feels abstract, where it's hard to stay off. It's hard to find that time in your busy life to stay fit,
Yeah, no, it is very difficult.
to the discipline to eat healthy, just because there's this abstract thing that, yes, I need to keep my weight down and I need to keep my cholesterol levels down and avoid heart disease and all of that. But what I'm contending is that
It's easier
when
to do
one
that.
has a goal,
Yeah,
it's easier to do that, because in the back of my mind, I'm like, you know what? If I allow myself this bit of exercise, then when I go surfing next time, my arms are not just going to flop on their side. I'll actually be able to
yeah.
have
No,
fun.
no, you're absolutely right. I totally agree.
Anyway, this podcast is about you, so let's turn it back to
No, I totally agree with you, though.
one of the things we talked about when you were getting into climbing was the inspiration that climbing provides with the big mountains, with big things in the alpine. And while you are most known for other things, I am curious though if there were some big walls or other, let's say, bigger routes that you pursued that are perhaps less known of. Did you ever put some of your training and some of your talents for rock in the alpine world? Or are there some things that
No, I haven't. No, I've done a little bit of multi-pitch sport climbing, but no, I never used to do any alpinism. Last year, I went to the Chamonix and climbed on the Grand Capuchin.
Oh.
We tried to do the Bonatti route. Me and
cool.
friend tried to do the Bonatti route, and which was an amazing experience because I hadn't done anything like that. Crossing the glacier and then doing this multi-pitch trad climb on the Grand Capuchin, and we got really, really high, and the weather just crapped out, and we just were at this point where it was like, if we went higher, we'd be committed, and if the weather broke, it'd be bad. And we were at this ledge where we could do this abseil to get back down to the glacier, and so we did that. So unfortunately, we didn't get to the top, but it was an incredible experience. And then I went to the Dolomites actually in the autumn with an old school friend, which was really good as well, around by the sort of Tre Chimmer and stuff. Didn't get great weather, but it was again, really good. So I do love all that sort of adventure. I do find it quite scary, especially as I get older. I seem much more nervous about things. I was in the Verdon Gorge recently in the south of France about a few weeks ago, just multi-pitching. I mean, I haven't climbed there since like the 80s, and that's really exposed. I mean, you can lean over these balustrades and you're looking like 1,000 foot straight down into the gorge, and then you got to like abseil down. But yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, I've been trying to plan a trip to the Verdun for like many years, and I have to, it's also finding the right kind of climbing partner who's up for that kind of trip.
Yeah.
Because, end of the day, if you can't do a climb, you can't just walk back to the car. You have to climb back up.
You can't, exactly. You're committed. Yeah, exactly. You got to do that, or you have to all the way down into the gorge. But yeah. And La Palude, the little village there, is really nice as well.
Oh,
and
wow.
there's no one climbing there. It's just not in vogue. An old friend of mine, Bruno, who wrote the guidebook, who lives in La Palude, who I knew back in the 80s. I saw him just a couple of weeks ago.
That's crazy.
And he says just no one goes there anymore. and none of the locals climb and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's rock everywhere. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like you've never seen so much rock.
You know what it is? I mean, they are all either in Greece.
They're in Spain.
Yeah.
Spain or
Yeah.
Greece. Spain or
Or
Greece.
they are at your local gym. That's where the people are.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think the thing is that the bottom line is most people don't want to do multi-pitch sport, because, you got to abseil in, and, as we just been saying, you got to abseil in, it's committing, you got to hang around on hanging belays, your boots are uncomfortable, thirsty, hungry, carrying stuff. But it's good fun.
It's my favorite kind of climbing because I feel you get all the rewards of being on a big wall and without the risk of your gear failing or crazy runouts. If you pick
the right route
on a bolted multi, if you pick the right line, and I recognize a lot of those routes in Verdun and in other places in Europe, even though they're bolted, they're old school. So yeah.
Old school bolting. I mean, there's definitely some old school bolting where you got big runouts and everything. And the people also talking about old school grades and new school grades as well, because they talk about the old school grades like the Patron Edlanger routes and all those ones, like pushing the ball around there, being really tough, and then more recent sort of routes grades being a bit more like maybe Spanish grades or whatever.
Yeah, people don't want old school grades. They want to tick certain grades. Talking of travels and adventure, Ben, one of your trips that I wanted to ask about, if it is indeed true, and hear more of, is if you, I believe you went climbing in India at some point, which is a bit of interest to me because that's where I come from. Did you actually make it to India to climb? What did you do over there?
Yes. I went. Well, we thought we might climb a mountain, but we ended up just bouldering. But we went to the source of the Ganges, with Shivling base camp. We went to this base camp. It's like a sort of meadow below the Shivling mountain, and it's called Tapavan.
I've been there many years ago. Yeah, beautiful.
It's an amazing place. It's one of the sort of most beautiful places I've ever been to in the world. And I always tell people, I mean, I've only been to India once and I went to the Himalayas, but I just think it's the most amazing thing I've ever done. And everyone should go to the Himalayas one time before they die. It was really very special.
What made it so amazing for you?
I mean, it's the culture, it's so different, the lifestyle, the people, the traveling, and then, the Himalayas are just like mind blowing. I mean, it's just the sheer scale. You just cannot comprehend it until you go there and you actually see it. It doesn't really, you can't appreciate it. And these are peaks that are like 6,500 meters. I mean, then you've got I haven't been near an 8,000 or 7. I mean, it's ridiculous. You can't believe people climb them without oxygen. But yeah, it was a very, very special place and really good bouldering.
Yeah. So did you manage to actually give Shivling, the massive a fair shot, or did you get distracted by the bouldering?
We just went bouldering. Well, I would have given it a go, but I'd gone with these 3 Norwegian friends, and they were the ones who had a bit of alpine experience, but they just weren't bothered. So it didn't happen. So I lugged all my ice axes and my plastic boots there and never used them. But I did go off sort of walking on my own, as if, up onto the sort of high glaciers and sort of round into sort of this Kum where the standard route up Shivling went. But I mean, there's no way I was going to go up it. But I mean, it's just incredible. Yeah, incredible location. I mean, there's another really good film I watched was Conrad Anker's film and Jimmy Chin's film on Meru. That's really, because that's where I was, and I walked right under Meru, the shark's fin. That's a really good movie. I mean, they just bonkers what they did.
It really is bonkers. Moving on, Ben, you ended up developing this incredible business with
Well, it's
moon climbing.
yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that. But I had this funny listener question from Sarah who wanted to ask that you guys were, you guys were setting standards, and you were doing all these bouldering trips before the advent of crash pads, right? You had your little towels, and you would like go on and hug yourself of like big moves and take falls and all of that. And I just wonder if you ever, and then you went on and developed this line which also includes
Crash pads.
crash pads. So I just wonder if you ever secretly like sniggle at modern climbers, who are falling, who won't go climbing without crash pads,
No, not at all.
which were developed by you.
Yeah, no, not at all. They're very sensible. Why would you? I mean, yeah, I mean, there's no way I'd go bouldering now without a crash pad. Not unless I knew I wasn't going to fall off. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, it is amazing actually because everyone has crash pads now when they go bouldering outdoors. But I mean, yeah, when we were bouldering in the early days, yeah, there weren't any crash pads. So, and yeah, you didn't even think about it because they didn't exist. But yeah, I mean, when I go out now, I mean, I did go bouldering recently up in the Lake District, and I only had one pad, and went to this boulder called the Bowderstone, which is like really mega slide boulder, massive boulder in the Lake District. We used to climb on back in the 80s and 90s, and it's still really popular now. And oh my God, just jumping down like a couple of meters above one crash pad, I was like scared. It was pretty pathetic. And a few times I jumped down onto the ground when the crash pad wasn't there, and the ground's just so hard. It's ridiculous. I mean, I just can't believe what we used to do. I mean, obviously my body's not like it was when it was in its 20s or 30s, but oh God, yeah. But it's also amazing what people are doing these days, highball stuff with loads of pads, isn't it? Because I mean, that's definitely not safe. I mean, that's really impressive as well.
Do you ever think that people who are head pointing with so they're climbing on a rope and trying to send, let's say, pre-rehearsed climbs on very dicey gear, but they're keeping a crash pad at the base just in case the gear falls or something else happens and they deck? Do you think that's kind of bending the ethics?
No, definitely not. Very sensible. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think so. No, not at all.
Okay, fair. I wonder.
I don't think anyone thinks that. No, I think you just do whatever you can to try and make it safe. I mean, they're still really dangerous, isn't it? What they're doing.
Sure. But it seems like, and again, this is looking from afar, and things can appear distorted. But it seems like in the UK there is this sort of strict ethic when it comes to climbing trad lines, where they have to be done with like style is paramount.
I don't think that's true anymore. I don't think that's true.
Is it? Oh, really?
Anymore. No, I don't think.
Huh.
I mean, it's head pointing, isn't it? That's what everyone does now. So they just practice the route, the top road, get all the gear placements sorted out, and then red point it. So that is.
Well, I thought England and the Peak District was like the last bastion of.
I don't think so. No, I mean, in what way? I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but.
In terms of maintaining the sanctity of style, where things like placing pads at the bottom, or maybe in some cases pre-placing some gear where it's particularly sketchy, like those kinds of things you can't do those things. Like you can't.
That's probably true. I don't know how much pre-placing of gear goes on, to be honest, on the hard routes. I mean, I think you do whatever you want as long as you're honest about as long as you're honest about what you've done. I don't think it matters, and and as long as you're not doing any harm to anything. And I mean, everyone knows that the purest style is ground up on the site. That's what everyone aspires to. Yeah,
maybe that's what it is. It's being very transparent about the style that one undertook when they did that ascent. What exactly was used or not used.
Yeah.
When they claimed to have completed something.
going back talking about your business. Okay, Ben, this might be a difficult question, but can you talk about the moon board? Can you demystify what it is for the average person and what it means to climbing training? And I had this facepalm moment a few years ago when I realized that the average person has no clue what climbing training looks like. I had this friend Shuram who saw Free Solo, the Alex Honnold movie. He saw it with Blade Flight, and then I've known him for like a long time. And he finally he's like, "Hey man, I had no idea that you guys did any kind of training," and this really opened my eyes because he probably thought that. I think what everybody else thinks that, hey, climbing is like hiking. You go up and you go for an adventure, and that's what it is. So anyway, can you help us understand what is the moon board and what it helps accomplish?
The moon board's it's like a standardized climbing wall. What people know about climbing walls, but it's like it's basically 8 foot wide by 12 foot high, set at 40 degrees, and it's got a standard set of holds on it that placed in a specific position. So anyone who's got a moon board, everyone's climbing on exactly the same board, and via like an app, a moonboard app, you can upload problems and share them with other users. I developed the moonboard, I don't know, back in the mid 2000s, and it was based on the sort of training boards that we used to train on in Sheffield with this place called the Schoolroom, which is an old Victorian school, and we'd built this is kind of commercial climbing walls. We'd built these three wooden boards in there, and then just sort of stuck holds on them. And that's where we sort of did our training, and we had a campus board in there and everything. And the moon board was based on one of the boards that we used to train on there in sort of style. It's called the 50-degree board. So yeah, hopefully that explains what a moon board is.
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together, training, aging, mindset, and awe. You will love this. You can find the link in the show notes or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
To me, it does, and but I think one has to at some point actually try climbing on the moon board to get a sense of what it is and what it's allowing people to.
Well, that's probably its downfall because it's so hard to climb on, and it's only a very small percentage of people can even climb on it. It's incredibly popular though, and there's thousands of them all around the world, but it's really aimed at sort of intermediate to advanced sort of level climbing. The holds are very small.
Are moonboards like that by intent or just by evolution? That it really does not dumb things down for somebody who is new to the sport.
No, it's intentional. It was developed as a sort of training tool, for, well, like I say, intermediate to advanced climbers. So it's not aimed for beginners. Beginners aren't, I wouldn't have thought I wouldn't be recommending a beginner train on a climbing board, go to a climbing wall and do sort of, easier problems and circuits, on different angled surfaces and everything, but I wouldn't be recommending climbing up boards. So no, it was made hard because it was for sort of intermediate to advanced climbers. But there is a lot of strong people in the world these days, a lot of strong people, just Well, gee, average sort of gym climber, whatever. I mean, it always amazes me when I go on the Moonboard app, and I look at the problems and the grades, and then you look at the video, sort of beta, the videos of the problems, and you see like these random people all over the place, just like hiking these like really hard problems and making them look really easy.
I mean, you developed and you unleashed this monster.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, yeah, like, did you ever think this would become such a
Not a day goes by when I don't
such a
curse it.
global phenomena? But not just that. I mean, you developed this to allow you to get better, so you could perform outside. But just climbing on the moon board and performing on the moon board is a whole thing in itself. And how do you reflect on that?
It's like, yeah, it's just become like a thing in its own right, hasn't it? It's like we were talking about how climbing's like a stepping stone to alpinism, and like board climbing's like a stepping stone to climbing hard boulder problems and routes. But now everyone's got sidetracked by the moonboard, and they're just on the moonboard all the time. But you do what you enjoy, don't you? I mean, I climb on it a lot.
Sure. I mean, Ben, one thing I certainly want to recognize and congratulate you foremost and your team is, I think it levels the training field in my eyes, because when I travel in other places, I mean, even places like India, which don't have a lot of training facilities, you don't see anything like the modern gyms we see in the West. But I see now moonboards sprouting up in some places in the big cities. And I see kids over there who are absolutely crushing. I mean, they don't have much but the moonboard and maybe a few other things around them. And they're able to bring a level of dedication to training on that board. And I mean, I saw a video of this kid, who did like I think like a 3-move V13, like an 8B on the moonboard somewhere in Delhi. And I'm like, I mean, this is like Alex Megos. I mean, I'm like, would you? It's amazing.
Yeah,
so
it's
I just say that, the moonboard does not make it easy for you to get started. But once you have gotten started and you've found a focus, I think it allows you to train just like,
yeah.
I mean, I think it's the peloton of.
I think it's very,
training.
I think it is a very effective sort of strength training tool, which is what it was always designed to be.
Why are grades so sandbagged?
Oh my God!
I mean, they could be hard.
Tell me about it. I don't know. It's not my fault. Honestly, I am as frustrated by the grading as you. I can sense you are. It's people that everyone's, I don't know whether they got big egos or what, but everyone's just like downgrading stuff. I constantly upgrade stuff, to try and balance it, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, grading is incredibly difficult though, isn't it? I mean, not just on a moonboard, just grading anywhere, whether it's boulder problems outside, routes, it's so subjective and it's very hard to understand. I work with a group of moonboard moderators, so we sort of try and decide which problems to make benchmarks and stuff. And we have so many debates about like problems and grades. It's just like, it's crazy.
Zooming out a little bit, talking about training and talking about, let's say, the evolution of climbing in Britain. And I have this perspective of, please correct me, because it seems like you and Jerry Moffat and your band of brothers, you guys had this big moment. You helped herald this big moment in, let's say, the 80s, maybe the early 90s, where you were pushing the standards with all these cutting edge ascents. And then now you have, and then I think maybe for a few years, it seems like things went a little dormant, where you didn't hear as much about people from the UK again pushing the edge of rock climbing, and now we are seeing a resurgence too. So for everybody from England listening, hey, congratulations on the Olympics.
Yeah, Toby Roberts.
With and it's not, yeah, I mean, Toby, you know,
And we had Hamish MacArthur. I mean, we had two males in the final and one female. One female. I mean, we were the best. Yeah, we were the best country. It was incredible, and it was amazing. Toby winning. Yeah, I was. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Things just go in ways, don't they? You know, around countries and stuff like that. I mean, for quite a long period, the Americans were not very strong in climbing, in sport climbing. And then suddenly they were just like flipping number one in the world. You know, they got so many Americans, so many good climbers and everything.
well,
I don't know what it is.
in the US, they say that I think there's been some kind of focus with, apparently the Olympics are a big reason why, with there's this focus now, maybe there's money coming in from the government.
Yeah, well, it's LA. It's
towards training facilities,
isn't it? Next Olympics is in LA, isn't that right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's yeah, exactly. It's in LA, and then so okay. Does the British team train on the moon board?
I think a little bit, yeah. I think, you know, you need to train on lots of different surfaces to be a good climber. You can't just train on a moon board or whatever. You know, I think variety is like one of the most important factors, really. So yeah, they'll be training on all sorts of different surfaces and wars. I mean, Toby Roberts went to Japan for like a 3-week, you know, training trip to work on his bouldering. You know,
Flipping the training script slightly. So in my mind, there are maybe these two distinct styles of training indoors for bouldering or even sport climbing. So you have, you know, the moonboard style of climbing, but then you also have, for lack of a better term, you know, the more gymnastic style of climbing, you know, big volumes and jumpy moves and paddling to holes and whatnot. Do you ever train on that style of climbing yourself, Ben?
No, I don't.
No.
No, very, very, very rarely. Sometimes I get dragged onto there by a friend of mine who's quite good at it. But no, I just really struggle with that style of climbing. Also, I think it's it's probably just not my style, but it's very kind of it's very shouldery, very like all over body, a lot of compression, you know, and you've had to use your heels like, you know, another pair of hands and stuff. And yeah, obviously very dynamic and jumpy. I mean, I think it's really hard on the body. So, you know, when you're my age, you know, I think that's particularly hard. Even a lot of the younger climbers, I think, get injured on that style of climbing. I think it's very tough on the body. But I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I thought the setting in the Olympics was just 10 out of 10. I mean, they were just brilliant. All the problems, I thought it was great. I think they did a really good job.
The Olympics were an absolute treat to watch.
Yeah.
I really think that, the level of climbing coming from the competitors, but then also from the route setters, where that ability to really separate levels, you know, from the very best.
Yeah.
Like you don't want everybody sending all the problems, but you don't want everybody failing on all the problems. So I think they were able to really separate out any reflections on some particular things that you found very impressive with climbing being on the world stage.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, Yanya's just on another level, isn't she? Yanya Gambare, she's just incredible. I mean, she just, it was just crazy, really. No, I mean, I just thought it was all great. I think there was, I thought it was a great sort of spectacle. I mean, I thought it's as good as any Olympic sport from a spectator point of view. I mean, even if you don't know that much about climbing, it's fairly easy. Okay, the scoring's maybe a little bit complicated, to get your head around. But you it's pretty obvious what you're trying to. The person who gets highest is the best. So it's easy to understand and it looks good. There's a lot of action. Yeah, I just thought it was amazing. Really, me and my daughter went to the men's semi-final boulder
Oh,
and
nice.
women's speed. And it was incredible atmosphere. Absolutely packed out. And when a French competitor came on, the crowd just went just mad. Yeah, it was really good.
Ben, moving on, I have this little section of the podcast that I've started now calling the Ageless section. So this is a question from Josh. And Josh Hosley wants to know, now that you already accomplished so much, and I'm not sure what your next goals are with climbing, how do you stay motivated to train hard? I recognize that fitness and health is part of that, but how do you find that stoke to put in the time to give to training? And how do you feel motivated to continue to go climbing outside when you think perhaps you may not be as strong as you were maybe until a few years ago?
I'm a competitive bastard. I think that's why. I don't know. I don't like. I want to be in good shape. It was like I was saying earlier on. I want to stay fit and healthy, and I mean, sometimes I think it's a curse the way I feel. That I'm like climbing so much or running so much, but I don't know. Yeah, I think just want to stay fit and
Sure.
healthy. I was going
Got
to say
it.
something then, but I forgot what it was now.
No, so I get it. You are very competitive. And what are you competing with? Are you competing with
Just with
the
myself.
current version of
I think it's
yourself?
just with
Okay.
myself, really. I mean,
Okay.
I've really got into running in the last 3 years. So I've been doing all sorts of running. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I'm probably almost more of a runner than a climber at the moment. It's been really hard balancing the two together. But obviously, because I'm quite new to running, I mean, I ran a little bit back in the 80s and 90s for sort of fitness for climbing and stuff, but I didn't do competitive running like I've been doing over the last few years. And that's been really good fun. And one of the things I like about running, like I've done a lot of sort of fell running competitions, they have age categories. So, you can still try and do well in your age category, even if you can't win the overall competition, which, is not very common in climbing, really. They
Sure.
don't really have age categories, although I think they should start doing it a bit more.
Yeah, climbing competitions are not as mature as maybe some of these more mainstream sports. I remember winning some beginner climbing
Nice.
competitions when I just started out, and maybe they'll have some like I think they have some masters level
I think I
competitions
think they do.
for
I'm not
climbing.
sure. I know I'm doing a competition actually in
Oh,
Manchester in about 3 weeks' time. It's only a British competition, but it's quite a big competition. But they do have a 45 and over category, so that's quite good. Even 45 seems young these days. Um, but yeah,
I mean, you did at 48. You did your hardest,
yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah,
you
yeah,
would be up
yeah,
against some,
yeah. Well, I also
some
did a route called Evolution, which is one of Jerry's routes at Ravens Tour in the Peak District, which is
sure.
gets 8C plus, but that'd be 9A in a lot of places.
Oh
I mean,
wow,
it's really flipping hard. And I did that when I was about 51 or 52. That's one of the things I'm really proud of, actually. I mean, it's a vicious little route. It's only like about 10 meters long, the tiny little
oh gosh.
crimps, and it's just like non-stop, for like 10 meters. It only takes about a minute or 2 minutes to red point it. But yeah, I did that in the 50s. So
Where are you with Northern Lights?
I've given in. I've given up. I've
Oh
given
yeah.
up. Yeah, I've given up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've given up. I missed that one, unfortunately. Yeah, it's a bastard. That I put
Okay.
a lot of time into that.
Yeah. How close did you
Oh
get?
man, I got really close about 3 years ago. I thought I was going to do it. Like,
Oh,
I was like about 2 meters, 3 meters from the belay, the highest I'd ever been. And then the weather got shit and conditions got bad, and I just went downhill, and then that was it. And then not being back. And then I lost my motivation. I mean, I must have spent 200 days on that over like 30 years or something.
Oh wow!
Annoying.
Yeah,
it's a really hard route. It's a really hard route. Adam Ondra did it when he was 16. It's flipping impressive. Yeah.
Do you think that, okay, so do you have, let's say, any other, let's say, milder projects in the near future which may get you psyched enough to get back on it?
No, not at the moment. I don't. No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I'm really enjoying climbing. I mean, basically, my climbing these days consists of bouldering indoors or trad climbing outdoors, which,
I mean, that can be very fulfilling.
Yeah, but it is very fulfilling. Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Try hard.
And maybe, sure. And maybe that's the secret even for me, which is I just do enough of it at whatever level that allows me to stay stoked and jonesing to go off for the next session. And then perhaps like you, one day I go and spot this king line.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
exactly.
Oh goodness. You know,
yeah.
And you just have enough fitness, fitness to maybe give it like a little window shopping burn, and then before you know it.
Yeah. That's why even when you're not motivated, you've got to try and do something. You've got to try and sort of tick over even when you're not motivated, like once a week, minimum.
Yeah. Okay, Ben, I'm gonna jump around a little bit. You named some of your routes after French military disasters.
I know. I feel bad about it now. And I have quite a few French friends, but I do feel bad about it. It seems like in bad taste, but it was just kind of a joke. Yeah, I presume you're referring to Agincourt and Magellan. Yeah.
Are you allowed to go climb on French crags?
Yeah.
Mohit from India wanted to ask you, did cutting off your dreadlocks, did it help or hurt your climbing?
Helped. Yeah, I lost about, goodness knows, a couple of pounds in weight getting rid of the dreadlocks.
What was your, let's say, your first, if you can remember, maybe a first big ascent after being shot? I mean, you have great hair. Anybody who's not watching this on YouTube, Ben still has great hair. So you never know, maybe a few years when we have a sequel.
I can't remember any pace routes. No, I mean, they didn't. In fact, they didn't. That's what everyone thought, they were really heavy, but actually they weren't very heavy at all. So it didn't make any difference. I didn't climb any better.
Julian had this thing. He wanted to hear of some fun Ben and Jerry stories. But I know that's like a really vague prompt. So to modify that, when you think back to that era where you and Jerry were climbing so much together, you were pushing each other. Can you think of maybe one memorable time when you were fighting for the same thing really hard? And it doesn't matter who won, but both of you learned something valuable.
I don't know about that, but all through that, all I can think of is when we had like a big bust up in Tokyo in Japan when we were there for a climbing competition. We were really into video games, driving video games at the time, and the Japanese arcades were incredible. And we went to these arcades and we were racing each other like in cars on these arcades. And basically, in one of the races, he pushed me off the track and won the race. And I accused him of like cheating as we like sort of left the arcade. He got really angry and grabbed me by the head, put me in like a headlock. But we made up. We made up. But we did get pretty competitive with each other at times. But we're also incredibly lucky to have each other to sort of drive each other on. Good training partners, invaluable, really.
If you can tell me, what is one thing about Jerry that most inspires you?
His determination, his competitiveness, his focus, dedication. I mean, all of it is like, yeah, he was really impressive.
I know that Jerry got into surfing, and I think he became pretty good at it. And
Yeah.
did you dabble?
He becomes good at everything he does.
He does, yeah.
Golf,
Even writing
surfing.
books. Even
Yeah.
writing books. He's written some,
That
beautiful books.
training book, yeah.
Did you guys run together? Did you surf together?
We've
with him a little bit?
surfed a bit together, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Was
I
there
mean,
some? I don't know. Was there some paddle battling? Some.
No paddle batting. No, it was always it was always very friendly in the water.
I don't believe that. I don't buy that.
No, it was. Yeah, it was. It was.
I mean, if surfing, if nothing is, brings out even more of that.
The worst in people.
Yeah, I mean, you just have that finite resource. You can't
Yes.
take burns on the same wave. The wave passes you.
Yeah, you only have
Okay.
one person per wave, can't you? Yeah. I mean, there's some horrible places, yeah, to surf. Well, yeah, I mean, you just shouldn't get in the water in certain places, should you, with locals? But most of the places I surf, actually, people are really friendly.
Do you still?
I was in California this summer, actually. I was
Oh.
down in Southern California with my daughter,
Oh.
and up in Berkeley.
Oh.
Actually, we went into the Sierras and went up to Tuolumne, did a bit of climbing, and then went over the eastern side of the Sierras, and then down to Southern California to just near San Diego, near La Jolla. Did a bit of
amazing.
surfing. I mean, it was really, the waves were very small, but it was lovely being in the water.
You went out at La Jolla Pier. Is that where you
No,
went?
we
or-
were just north. What's the town? I can't remember what the name of the town is. Just north of La Jolla. It's only like 15-minute drive. Really nice town.
Carlsbad or
Yeah,
Or
near
Oceanside?
Carlsbad. Near
Oceanside or?
Oh my God, I forgot.
Oh, it's okay. It's fine. It's that place has a bounty of waves.
Yeah.
Sorry that
Yeah.
you didn't score, but summertime you have to come back in the winter.
Yes,
and
yeah.
bring your wetsuit.
Yeah. I'd probably be terrified.
A couple of fine questions, Ben. What may be, let's say, a significant habit or behavior that you found in the last, say, 5 years that has been the most impactful?
Oh my God. Oh, that's a difficult question. Not getting injured. I don't know. Just avoiding injury, not overtraining. I think, listening to your body, understanding in your body, learning to see what it can take and what's too much and stuff. Don't know if that's helpful. Focusing on sort of, good quality short sessions. I mean, definitely what I've been working on is my strength. I've been nearly all of my training is strength focused, because that's the thing that I've noticed is really sort of dropping off as I age. I found that my endurance is actually pretty good. Or if it's not, it comes back very quickly and even gets better after that. Whereas the strength, because obviously you're losing muscle all the time. So yeah, all this sort of climbing. That's why I was saying earlier, I do indoor bouldering really, because that's basically strength. It's working on power and strength and your fingers, and then lifting heavy weights. To sort of stimulate growth hormone, try and get some muscle on. Running's not good either for climbing. I mean, that's, my legs have sort of got strong, and my upper body's kind of sort of wasted even more.
So what I hear is training for power or bouldering, that's good for you. Getting injured is not good for you. Running is not good for you. Any other couple of things you're finding that are, or either finding, or let's say, just maybe some hard-won strategies on things that you believe have helped you fine-tune your training? Things that you're doing and things that you would like to avoid to be able to continue being able to find joy in climbing, but also to not get hurt?
Well, it's like I said, it's listening to your body and sort of knowing when to stop, not overdo it. I mean, I think one of the big things is just being consistent. Much better to do little often than a lot sort of sporadically. It's just making sure you're doing something, well, as often as possible. Really, I mean,
Sure. As we get older, Ben, a lot of people, tend to, I think it's easy to be a little upset that one may be past our physical prime. But also, I believe a lot of studies show that people, as they get older, they find greater happiness. So, what are you perhaps most grateful for where you might be at your stage of life?
Oh, my health. I'm just very grateful for my health. I'm just touch wood. I still feel very sort of fit and healthy. I mean, that's the most important thing in life, isn't it? Having your health.
And then, Ben, do you think your best years are behind you or ahead of you?
Yeah, behind me.
Come on. Northern Lights. It's there someday.
Definitely behind me.
Okay. What are you most
But
grateful
I'm totally
for?
fine about that. I'm totally fine about it. I'm really not. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you obviously.
Yeah, I know I am, like I say, I am very competitive, but I'm also I'm just happy that I can still do this stuff, even if it's not as hard as it was.
Do you think you're aging gracefully?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay, here's a fun question. In recent memory, what has been perhaps the best use of, let's say, £100 sterling in your case?
Oh my God, getting my dog.
Getting your dog. Toy poodles seem to be
Toy poodles. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get yours from a breeder?
Actually, it was from a breeder, yeah, and it was more than £100. But
I was going to say.
Oh, I don't know. That's a tricky question. I was going to say a good book, but they're not £100.
Ben, how do you find balance in your life? You are running this business. You also have this lovely family. You do trips with you had this great trip with your daughter. You are still training. You're loving running. How do you find balance?
Again, I just think I'm very lucky. I suppose I've got to that point where, I've got enough time to do all those things, and I'm still healthy enough to do them. But yeah.
Sure.
Really, it's tricky, isn't it? I suppose motivation, I'm just very motivated. It gets back to what you were saying as well about having goals, even if my goal in climbing is just to try to slow the decline and, just try and still try to sort of perform at a reasonable level.
That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ageless Athlete Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed creating and producing it. Whether you are an athlete looking to push your limits or someone striving to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle as you age, there is always something new to learn. From Ageless Athlete, we bring you a fresh episode each and every week. If you liked what you heard, we would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a review, crush those 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. It helps us reach more people who are passionate about staying strong and resilient, no matter their age. Don't forget to visit our website and leave your email so I can send you occasional insights, stories, and tips to keep you inspired and motivated on your journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Ageless Athlete Podcast and on YouTube at Ageless Athlete Podcast as well for even more great content. All of these links are available on the show notes for this episode. This show is entirely produced by me, Kush Khandelwal, based out of California with the help of my trusted adventure pup Roger. Until next time, keep challenging yourself. Keep pushing those limits. Stay mentally and physically fit. Continue doing what you love to do. And my friends, stay ageless.
Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through prior episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.